In a town destroyed by fire, a dying mother made one last sacrifice to save her child. Hidden in the ashes, a little girl waited for a miracle until a man with a hidden past found her. This is not just a story of survival, but a story of fate, loss, and unexpected family. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. The wildfire started just before dawn, when the sky over Blackridge turned a strange orange and the wind carried the smell of burning pine into every home. Clara Miller had already been sick for months, too weak to run, too tired to fight. When she saw the flames racing down the hills, she understood there would be no time for help. The old farmhouse creaked as embers hit the roof and smoke filled the air. Clara coughed hard, holding her chest, but her first thought was not fear for herself. It was fear for her little daughter Lily, still asleep in the next room. Clara shook Lily awake gently, trying not to panic. Lily was only 5, too young to understand death or disasters. Clara wrapped her in a thick fire blanket she kept near the stove for winter nights. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely tie it. "Listen to me," Clara whispered, forcing her voice to stay calm. "You must be very brave now." Outside, the sound of cracking wood and roaring flames grew louder. Clara knew she could not carry Lily far, and she could not outrun the fire even if she tried. The farmhouse had an old metal ash pit under the fireplace. Used years ago for coal? Clara remembered it suddenly, like a memory sent from somewhere beyond fear. She lifted the heavy iron cover, revealing a narrow but deep space filled with cold ashes. It wasn't perfect, but it was hidden and protected by thick brick walls. Clara lowered Lily inside, brushing ash from her face and pressing a small bottle of water into her hands. "Stay quiet, no matter what happens," she said. Her voice breaking for the first time, Lily started to cry, confused and scared, but Clara kissed her forehead and held her close one last time. "Mommy will be right here," she lied softly. She closed the lid slowly, leaving a tiny gap for air. The fire reached the house minutes later. Flames wrapped around the walls, and the roof collapsed with a terrible sound. Clara lay on the floor near the fireplace, too weak to move, breathing smoke and heat. Her last thoughts were not of pain, but of hope that Lily would survive even if she did not. When the fire finally burned itself out, Blackridge looked like a ghost town. Trees were black skeletons, cars melted into strange shapes, and the air felt heavy with silence. Rescue teams came and went, assuming no one could have survived near the center of the blaze. But one man, Ethan Cole, walked slowly through the ruins long after others had left. He was known as a simple farmer who lived on the edge of town, quiet and distant, keeping to himself since moving there years ago. Ethan had seen many disasters before, though no one in Blackridge knew it. He trusted his instincts more than official reports. As he stepped into the remains of Clara's farmhouse, something felt wrong, not empty enough. The silence inside was too sharp. He kicked aside broken wood and ash, listening carefully. At first he heard nothing. Then, faintly, a weak coughing sound came from beneath the fireplace. Ethan froze, heart racing, and dropped to his knees, clearing debris with his bare hands. The metal lid was hot but still intact. Ethan forced it open, ignoring the pain, and saw 2 wide, terrified eyes staring back at him through gray ash. Lily was covered in soot, shaking and barely breathing. Ethan lifted her out carefully, holding her against his chest as if she were made of glass. She didn't cry at first. She was too shocked to react. Only when she felt fresh air did she start sobbing, clinging to his shirt like she was afraid he might disappear. Ethan carried Lily out of the ruins, walking past burned fields and silent roads. He kept talking to her softly, even though she could barely respond. He told her she was safe, that she was brave, that everything would be okay. As he walked, memories he had buried long ago came rushing back: sirens, broken buildings, people trapped under rubble. Before becoming a farmer, Ethan had been a rescue officer in major disasters across the country. He left that life after one mission that went terribly wrong. Now, holding Lily, Ethan realized he could never truly escape who he was. Some people run from danger, but others are pulled toward it no matter how hard they try to live quietly. He placed Lily gently in his truck and drove as fast as he could to the nearest hospital. Behind them, the town of Blackridge lay in ashes. But in Ethan's arms was proof that even in the worst destruction, life could still survive. Lily woke up in a white hospital room, the smell of smoke replaced by the sharp scent of disinfectant. Her throat hurt and her chest felt heavy, but she was alive. The first face she saw was Ethan's, sitting quietly beside her bed, his clothes still stained with ash. For a moment she didn't remember what had happened. Then the fire, the darkness, and her mother's voice came rushing back. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered for her mom. Her small hands trembling under the blanket. Ethan felt his heart tighten. He had been trained for emergencies, for injuries and loss, but nothing prepared him for explaining death to a child. He spoke gently, choosing every word carefully. He told Lily that her mother had loved her more than anything, and that she had been very brave. Lily listened in silence, her face pale and empty as if she didn't fully understand. When the truth finally settled in, she turned her face toward the wall and cried until she fell asleep again. Over the next few days. Lily slowly recovered physically, but emotionally she seemed distant, like part of her had stayed behind in the ashes. Nurses tried to comfort her with toys and cartoons, but she barely reacted. Ethan stayed every day, even sleeping in a chair beside her bed. He brought her small things from his farm, a soft scarf, a wooden horse, a jar of honey. He didn't know why he did it at first. Maybe he felt guilty for surviving when Clara had not. Or maybe he saw his own past in Lily's eyes. Doctors said Lily was lucky. The ash pit had protected her from the worst heat, and her mother's fire blanket had saved her lungs from severe damage. Still, she would need time to heal. Social workers came to ask questions about relatives, about where Lily could go. There was no one. Clara had moved to Blackridge years ago, escaping a troubled life, and she had no family left. Lily was completely alone in the world, except for the man who had pulled her from the ashes. Ethan struggled with the idea of walking away. He had chosen a quiet life to avoid pain, not to carry it again. Yet every time he looked at Lily, he felt something shift inside him. He remembered a little girl he once failed to save during a flood, a memory that haunted his nights and pushed him to leave rescue work. Lily felt like a second chance he never asked for but desperately needed. Slowly, without making any promises, he began to act like a guardian. When Lily was discharged, Ethan took her to his farm on the edge of town. The place was simple but warm, surrounded by open fields and tall fences. Lily was scared at first, unsure if this stranger's home was safe. Ethan gave her her own small room, painted white with a window facing the sunrise. He cooked simple meals, burned half of them, and laughed at himself for the first time in years. Lily watched quietly, then slowly started to smile again. Life didn't magically become perfect. Lily had nightmares, waking up screaming about fire and smoke. Ethan would sit beside her bed, holding her hand until she calmed down. Sometimes he woke up shaking too, memories of old rescues mixing with new fears of losing her. But each morning, when Lily stepped outside and fed the chickens or ran through the grass, both of them felt something healing inside. The silence of the farm was different from the silence of ashes. It was peaceful. Not empty. Months passed, and the town learned the full story. People who once saw Ethan as a quiet farmer began to understand who he really was. They praised him, called him a hero, but Ethan didn't like the word. To him, heroes saved everyone. He had only saved one child. Still, that one life was enough to change his own. He started volunteering again, training younger rescue workers. No longer hiding from his past. In the end, Ethan officially adopted Lily. The papers were signed in a small courtroom. But the real promise had already been made long before. Lily called him Dad for the first time while they were planting a tree in the backyard. Ethan stood frozen, unable to speak as tears filled his eyes. The tree was meant to replace something lost, but it became a symbol of something new instead. From a dying mother's final sacrifice and a town reduced to ashes. A new family was born. Lily would grow up knowing pain, but also strength. Ethan would live with memories, but also purpose. Together, they proved that sometimes the most ordinary-looking people carry the most extraordinary hearts. And even from the deepest loss, life can rise again.